I'm glad that we've clarified that this is an all of economy, all of government approach. To that effect, how does it enable us to transition off of fossil fuels and meet our climate targets when in the most recent budget you've signed off $200 million to subsidise new fossil fuel exploration?
Yeah, in the context of the pathways to meet our targets, obviously
Madam Chair, point of order. Madam Chair, I think the member just mentioned it was $100 million.
$200 million.
Oh, good. $200 million for exploration of oil.
Yeah, you can keep cheerleading that. I'm asking questions. Thank you.
Let the Minister answer the question, Sana.
Can you just repeat the question, please?
Okay. I would really love it if we can just focus on the existential issue of climate change. So why then, if you accept that it requires an all of government approach, an all of economy approach, the government signed off $200 million in subsidies for new fossil fuel exploration and extraction in the most recent budget. How is that helping us to get towards minimising reliance on fossil fuels and reaching our climate targets?
Well, first and foremost, the way in which the emissions reduction plan is structured, that was released by this government last year, is based on the pathways in which we'll achieve emissions reduction. And so each area of the economy, including agriculture, transport, energy, etc., are itemised within the broader plan. The accountability matrix in the context of ministerial responsibilities for the respective areas was the way in which that plan was designed. And I have overarching accountability on behalf of the Prime Minister, ensuring that our overarching plan is able to meet its targets and does so. And
okay, so let's interrogate that, and I'd appreciate succinct answers because we only have so much time. So your emissions reduction plan requires how much of a reduction in megatons?
In the context of the timeline, it depends on the timeline in which emissions budget you're referring to.
I'm talking about ERP2.
Yeah, at what point in time? So in terms of the end of 2030, the end of 2025, 2035, can we just clarify the point in regards to what point?
Because do you want to know what the budget is?
Yes.
The budget.
Yes. 3.3 megatons. Anyway, okay, so approximately a third of that relies on organics, reduction from emissions from organics, correct? Minister?
It is one of the pathways in order to achieve our plan, yes.
Yes, and how much is your plan relying on organics emissions reduction?
Okay, well, I'll go through. I'm happy to ask.
So if you're talking about the WMF investment in organic projects, I think that's what you're referring to. That it's projected to achieve 1 megaton of abatement in EB2. I'm pretty sure.
So approximately a third of the plan. And Minister, how?
So just to be clear, there are 305 megatons permitted in emissions budget 2. So it's 1 megaton out of 305 of the total budget.
Okay, Minister. How much money is required for us to meet that particular organics component of the emissions reduction plan?
I don't have the financial number for that aspect of our broader plan. I think let's be fair in the context that this is a comprehensive program which includes multiple work streams in order to deliver an overarching target. I'm very happy to provide detailed questions in the context of that. But if we stand back and look at the overarching point, we have a government that's committed to its climate change targets. We have a comprehensive plan that provides a pathway in order to achieve those targets. We are now focused on the action related to ensuring those targets, and that work is undertaken to deliver those targets. And that involves an all-of-an-economy approach in which all ministers within this government have differing degrees of responsibility to do. I have overarching accountability for the macro delivery of that plan. But also with my hat as Energy Minister, I obviously have responsibilities within that remit as well. And I think we're taking significant steps forward in terms of progress on that front. We may disagree on elements of that, no doubt, but at the end of the day, we've got a credible plan that will deliver our targets and we are focused on execution.
Respectfully, Minister, the credibility and the delivery of that plan requires us to see that action actually playing out in the real world, and that is precisely what I am asking you about. So the answer to that question is...
If you just stick to questions.
It's a written question from Minister for the Environment, Penny Simmons, who said in response to that question that it would cost us $30 million a year to achieve the reductions that you have spelled out in your emissions reduction plan. Are you aware that that would mean, per the cuts that you have made in your budget, that would mean that all of the money in the Waste Minimisation Fund has to go to organics, which then would be meaning that there's no money left for all of the other waste minimisation projects that you rely on for emissions budget too?
Oh, look, what I can say to that is that the amount of 30 million in the context of the amount of money required to do that is consistent with what I understand is the amount of money necessary. I think when we look at the opportunity, in particular around methane emissions, methane provides a significant element of our overarching emissions as a country. Not all of that methane comes from livestock. Actually, around 10% of the overarching methane target comes from waste. And I'm very pleased to see that we have got pathways in place in order to reduce methane from landfill, and obviously organic waste is a key contributor to that. I think if we stand back and think, what does good look like? I think having a waste minimisation fund that incentivises the appropriate capture of organic waste and ensure that that methane is not being released into the atmosphere is a positive thing. Ensuring that those safeguards are in place, acknowledging the role in which methane has in terms of warming the broader economy. But it is one component of a broader plan, and we have a plan that covers all aspects, all sectors, all gases in that aspect, and it is something that we are focused on delivering as part of the broader delivery of our emissions reduction plan.
Okay, so the Chair's allowed me one final question on this
question.
point.
Yeah.
Can you then shut down any further speculation that you will, for any further point, entertain the idea of no additional warming?
Well, what I can confirm to the member is that as a government, we have undertaken a scientific review that took into account where the targets for methane should be set on a no additional warming basis. That review has been received by government, is currently being considered. We've obviously also received reporting from the Climate Change Commission in regards to what their position and views are on that, which is what we would expect. And we will spend time to consider all of that information aside from what we need to do and make decisions around that. And I think that is aligned with a government that is focused on using the appropriate evidence and science in order to inform our decision making. That is what we're doing. We're taking our time to do so. I think that's prudent and reasonable. But we do understand that there is a need for certainty in the context of where those targets sit. What I am impressed to see, having visited field days last week, is actually the technological innovation available for reducing particularly emission in livestock. If I think about some of the boluses that are available for beef cattle, which account for around 8.7% of methane emissions alone, some of that technology produced and innovated here in New Zealand will be available for production in November of this year. And the efficiency of reduction of methane in beef cattle is in the region of 70%, and that is signed off by regulators and will be available from production from November. And we are 26 years, give or take, 25 from 2050. And you've got solutions and innovations on the table like that. That is one example. Livestock genetics. We have livestock literally outside of in the Waikato that are nearly 2 years old, that are low emissions livestock, which are also heat tolerant in the context of a warming climate. That is the tech that we have available in New Zealand, and that is very much on the cusp of relief. So for those that say these targets potentially are too high, I would caution them in the context that we're talking over 25 years from now. And I think many of us remember, well, I don't think any of us could place a view on where technology will be 25 years from now. But I can tell you that within 120 days from now, solutions are in place in order to reduce methane from beef cattle by in the region of 70%. And that is before you have genetics playing into it in addition to that. So, this is an opportunity. And actually what is more of an opportunity is who has the largest dairy herd in the world? Well, it's India. And India are also part of the Paris Agreement, and they also have requirements to reduce emissions, including methane. Well, guess what? New Zealand has a solution to decarbonise and reduce emissions in livestock, and will be able to work in countries across the world. This is an export opportunity, and as New Zealanders, we should be very proud of the agricultural innovation that is available. But don't get scared of the targets. The targets are achievable. We should be ambitious and think about where the win-win is. If we can get economic growth and emissions reduction, that's a great thing for this country.
The government has allocated $200 million to new fossil fuel exploration in the most recent budget. As Minister for Climate Change, is $200 million better spent for sake of climate, energy and economic security on new fossil fuel exploration or on renewable energy projects?
Well, look, the reality of any decision that government needs to take is there are trade-offs in the context of that decision. I think, quite simply, without an economy, we don't have any money to spend on climate change or an economy to actually enable that investment to reduce emissions. The reality is, as I've noted, is there is a number of medium and large size industrials in New Zealand that do not have a pathway other than the utilisation of gas in order to produce the goods that they produce. And we have a choice in the context of the broader market is to undertake initiatives to bring online more gas to sustain those industrials and manufacturing, which is what is seen as a priority under this government, because growing our industrial base and protecting our manufacturing base and creating good paying jobs in our cities and our regions and provinces particularly is a priority for this government.
And you see that.
And the considerations around climate change, around the funding of the $200 million for oil and gas is in the context of ensuring that we can provide a mechanism to sustain that industry and that business in a New Zealand context, because it is critical to our national interest to produce that. For example, some of these manufacturing operations provide unique aspects into the broader New Zealand economy and supply chain that under the current geopolitical risk factors, including what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, that with supply chain constraints, we may find ourselves in a position where we don't have essential goods to provide support, say, to our agricultural sector, and that's a major issue. So those are the things that we weigh up when we make these decisions. It's never black or white in the context of trade-off in that conversation, but we weigh up all those considerations.